Okay, welcome to week 2 of our weekly webinars, and today's session is going to be on the basics of fat loss. So we're going to jump into the science of fat loss and just how it works very simply on a basic level. Okay, so fat loss can be a confusing enough topic. I'm going to try and simplify it as best I can over the next 15 minutes or so and make it, easy to understand for everyone. Okay, because the actual the science or the physiological response in the body is really simple. It's all the other stuff is what's making it confusing. So all the gimmicky diets and the special foods and so on, that's what's confusing everyone. But how it actually happens in the body is really simple. So this might not actually apply to some of us if you're happy with your body composition or whatever it may be, but I'm sure you know someone or you'll be chatting with someone someday and you might be able to pass on some of this knowledge to them and help them out on their journey of losing some weight or losing some fat. Okay, so it's not going to take long, 15-20 minutes hopefully, and we'll have got a good understanding of how to go about it. So the main idea behind fat loss is we have to create a negative energy balance within the body. Okay, so energy balance is essentially like the images show, it's like a scales. Okay, and when the calories in or the amount of food and drink we take in is higher than the amount of calories we expend or we burn, we put on fat. Okay, so taking in too much food versus expending less is going to lead to fat, and vice versa. When we burn more calories than we take in, we are going to lose fat. Okay, so if somebody wants to uh, put on muscle, they have to increase their caloric intake sensibly, albeit, and if they want to lose fat, they have to decrease their caloric intake, or sorry, create a negative energy balance. Okay, so there's two sides to the scales. One is calories in, one is calories out. If we want to lose fat, we want to tip the calories outside up so that we are burning more calories in our body than we are taking in. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If your body weight has kind of stayed at the same weight or roughly around the same point for quite some time, you've probably been using the top model, which is like an isocaloric balance, where the calories in, the calories out are balanced within the body. This is very common. So when people plateau in diets, this is what is happening. So again, we have to figure out how can we tip it in to your favor to lose more fat. Okay, so let's jump into it. So two sides of the scales, we're going to look at the calories in first. So calories in comes from food and comes from drinks. Straightforward enough. Okay, just regards drinks and stuff, just the big one that kind of jumps out at me is like alcohol. There is quite a amount of calories in certain drinks. So somebody can be really good on their diet for 5 or 6 days, go out for pints the weekend, and they can't understand why they're not losing weight. Like drinks, there is calories in drinks too. If you have like a cappuccino every day, 3 or 4 times a day, there is a certain amount of calories in that, and again, that's going to affect this whole process. Okay, but food is the most common type. Okay, this is how we can most easily create this calorie balance. This negative calorie balance. So just got some 3 examples to me that make a lot of sense. So the first one looks like 2 very similar bowls of muesli with some strawberries and some Greek yogurt. One bowl is 580 calories and the other bowl is 366. So a difference of over 200 calories. So bear in mind, 350 calories is about a pound of fat. Okay, so difference of 200 above. So what has actually changed? So what has changed is it looks to be there's less muesli in the bowl on the right, but more Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt is lower in calories. Greek yogurt will be less in calories than something like muesli. Muesli will be quite calorie dense. So what this photo is showing us is that we can have a bowl of food that looks very similar, um, but one is far less in calories. And we do that because the person making up this photo had an understanding of, like, how protein is less in calories but carries the same amount of weight or substance to it. Okay, so if we were to, it's not about, so what this photo really does is it shows us it's not about starving ourselves, lads. Okay, it's about understanding that we can create a negative calorie balance using just sensible dietary approaches. Okay, we don't have to do extreme diets, just drinking drinks, or totally removing foods. Like, see how simple that was. Pull back some of the muesli, increase the Greek yogurt, we still got 200 calories less. You do that for 7 days a week, that's 1400 calories less in your week. That's 350 into 1400. That's about 4 pounds of a difference. So let that sink in for a second, because that's huge and it's such a small change. Okay, but then again, if you don't have the awareness around this, then you can't make those changes. All right, so yeah, that's our first example. So having awareness, losing weight is not about starving yourself. More often than not, it's about manipulating it into a negative calorie balance. Picture 2 then is McDonald's chips versus a salad. McDonald's chips, as you can see, is 100 calories less than the salad. So does that mean it's a better option? Yes and no. Well, it's mainly no, right? So the chips is obviously going to be far less in micronutrients. It's going to be far higher in fats and oils, preservatives. It's really highly processed. Okay, so it's going to play detrimental effect on our actual health over a long-term period. Yes, it will be slightly more palatable at the time, but like from a longevity point of view, the salad is going to be far higher in micronutrients, far more higher in fiber, which is going to keep you fuller for longer, and there's no preservatives, no additives as such. Okay, so again, this is where people can get a small bit confused with the whole, if it fits my calories, is that okay? It is and it isn't. Yes, you will have less calories by eating the McDonald's chips, but what's the cost of it? The cost of it is you're going to have far less micronutrients, far less nutrient dense food in your body, far less fiber in your body, and fiber is really important for fat loss actually, and you're probably going to be hungry about 20 minutes later, so you're going to eat again anyway. Okay, and we all know processed foods are just really they're very much related to like cardiovascular diseases and stuff. Okay, the last option I want to go through, or the last image, is the idea of the quantity of food and how that again relates back to calories. So you see on the image on the left, it's 590 grams of food, which is pretty decent weight wise, versus only 65 grams with a handful of nuts. Okay, so nuts are a good example for this picture because they're very calorie dense, which means that you don't have to have that many of them, and they're quite high in calories. Okay, versus on the left, you've got 3 slices of bread, some red pepper, 2 eggs, half an avocado, some butter. There's a lot of stuff I've called out, and for me anyway, looking at that looks like a meal. Okay, albeit it's not the best meal in the world, but it certainly is a meal. Versus on the right, that looks like a snack to me. So the meal on the left could take 15-20 minutes to eat, versus on the right, it's probably 2 or 3 minutes. You can pop it into your mouth as you go. Now, for someone that lives an extremely hectic and busy life, yes, the image on the right can be very useful. But for most of us, we have time to sit down and make a meal. Okay, if you don't, you can definitely create time, and it's going to feel a lot more substantial in your body. Now, manipulating the food side of things or the drink side of things for people is going to be very, very individual. So I'm not going to give any fleeting rules as such just yet. Just know that these are just some kind of important ideas and concepts to keep in your head. So calories out, or caloric expenditure, is affected by 4 different areas. Okay, so you've got your BMR, or your basal metabolic rate. This is the amount of calories required to keep your organs just functioning or keep you alive. So your intestines, your stomach, your liver, kidneys, if you didn't even get out of bed for the day, there's a certain amount of calories required just to keep them functioning. the fitter you are, the higher your BMR. The younger you are, the higher your BMR. I think your BMR declines 2% by decade of age, something along those lines. But for most part, when people are active in training, they can keep that right up there. Your exercise activity is going to increase calories expenditure. So I've given two images of a guy weight training or squatting versus somebody walking or running. So both will cause caloric expenditure, but it's the cost on the body or the effects on the body afterwards. So okay, so I often refer to this. I think it's a really important point to make, right? So if we have a person who is 80 kilos and they want to get to 70 kilos, okay, the most important thing they can obviously do is they can just manipulate their food and create a calorie deficit that way, okay. But they're obviously going to increase their calories out as well, and they're going to do that through exercise. So this person has a choice: can they go down the strength training route or the walking or the cardio based route? Okay, so walking, jogging, cycling, all that kind of thing. So what advice would I give to that person? Okay, so we're going to presume that they're going to be successful and they're going to get from 80 to 70 kilos, so 10 kilos of fat loss. So what are they going to look like when they have lost that 10 kilos? Okay, and for me, when somebody is predominantly doing cardio, they just become a smaller person, a smaller version of the person they were. Okay, so if they were 80 kilos and we'll just say they were overweight or obese, they're now 70 kilos and they're at a healthy body weight, but they're just a smaller version of that. So an awful lot of time, people who want to tone up, or lads who want to put on muscle, walking, cycling, it doesn't really do that, to be honest. You have to really kind of stress the muscular system through weight training or strength training. Okay, so again, that person that goes from 80 to 70 after following a resistance program will change their shape of their body in a positive manner. Okay, it's not necessarily going to mean like muscles bulging left, right, and center. That's not how it works. People train, years and years and years and still don't get that. But it will make lads kind of look more that V shape and a bit more defined in certain muscles for women. Okay, which is generally what both populations want. So my point is, exercise is going to help burn the calories, but choose the exercise that's going to get you to your end goal in a better position. Along with that, like just think if somebody is obese or overweight, and the effects of running, say for example, on that body. So the tendons, the joints, the muscles, ligaments, all that trauma they go through every time they run. It's constant pounding on the ankles and the ligaments, and specifically the smaller kind of joints and stuff. All right, versus something like weight training, it's low impact, and the success ratio is far higher. Okay, so on top of that too, we have non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT as it's commonly called. This is just your general day-to-day walking about activity. Okay, so gardening, painting, housework. The most common one is the 10,000 steps though. Okay, so trying to get the steps in, and the reason for that is to increase your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So it's not exactly prescribed exercise, but it requires calories for us to burn it. So you'll see up at the top right hand corner the idea of your health, your choice, and how that taking the steps over the elevator can be extremely beneficial to us. And what seems such a simple little thing can have such a snowball effect throughout, for 1 day to 2 days to 1 month to 2 months to 1 year to 2 years, how it builds over time. And whatever it is, 38 steps on that staircase, if you do that a couple of times a day for a couple of years, the effect is huge. The amount of calories we burn is huge, and such simple steps can be so effective throughout our day. This will, the NEAT will be different for everyone. Okay, so if someone was, say for example, if they were farming all day, they're going to be doing a lot, their NEAT is going to be quite high. Okay, like they're not going to say, I'm going out exercising now and they're going out herding cattle. They're just going to work, versus somebody that's in a desk job all day. It's going to be a bit harder. You have to be a bit more conscious of it as best you can. So certain careers will be more, like it'll be harder to get your niche as high as possible. That's all. But awareness is the first step. Okay, and the last section of this, lads, is our thermic effect of food, TEF. Essentially, this just means that certain foods will require more calories to be burned in order for these foods to be broken down to the body. Okay, so if you look at the proteins, the carbs, and the fats in the right hand corner, they're 3 macronutrients. So what we want to do is we want to diet predominantly high in protein because it requires 20 to 30% more calories to be burned in comparison to carbs and fats. Okay, so that's why I'm a big proponent of high protein diets. What also should be popped in here too is high fiber diets. Is something similar to protein, as a 20 to 30% caloric burning effect off them, which is far higher than carbs and fats. Now, thermic effect of food is a very minor thing. That's kind of it makes up about 10% of your total calorie expenditure. Your NEAT can make up to 20 to 30. Exercise activity, something similar. And your BMR takes up the vast majority of it. It's about 50 to 60%. Okay, but again, exercise activity, NEAT are stuff that are really, really controllable for each and every one of us. And again, it's a very much an individual basis. See what you're doing exercise wise and trying to progress it from there. Okay, but that is how the body expends calories or burns calories. Okay, so reasons you're not losing fat. All right, so the main reason is you're not in a calorie deficit. Okay, you have not created a negative calorie deficit. You're either taking in too much food and drink, or you are not expending enough calories through NEAT, exercise activity, thermic effect of food, or through your BMR. Okay, or a combination of both. You're just not creating a calorie deficit. You might think you are, but you're not. The only outlier to that would be if you have a medical issue, so like hypothyroidism, polycystic ovarian syndrome, testosterone decline, some cardiovascular diseases, and diabetes. Okay, but if you do not have one of those issues and you're not losing weight, it's because you're not in a calorie deficit. Simple, end of story on that. Okay, it's very rare that anything is going to affect that. Okay, you'll see that all those issues on the right, they're very much linked to your like hormonals, your hormones and your hormonal response within the body. Okay, so again, coming back to the idea of the salad versus the chips, the salad will have a very much a positive effect on the nutrient balance in your body, versus something like the chips will probably be more negative and can cause, like increased levels of cortisol and stuff. That's an example of one hormone that would have a negative effect on fat loss. Okay, so more often than not, we are just not in a calorie deficit, and just learning to create that is probably the most important thing you can take from today. That weight loss isn't overly complicated. You just haven't set up your week, your day, your meal, your exercise, whatever it may be, to suit that or to create that negative calorie balance. Okay, so where do we start? All right, so we've gone through how it works, and I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's pretty simple. It's a balance. What you put in, what you take out. If you keep putting in too much, you're going to put on weight. If you expend a little bit more than you normally do, you're going to lose weight. Okay, so how can we get this going? So for me, the very first thing is to get honest. Okay, having all these facts and figures and this knowledge and education is fantastic, but if you are lying to yourself, it's a waste of time. And I'm telling you now, if you can just sit down with yourself and be honest, it's the most important first step you'll have with yourself, and it's the one that will serve you the best. Okay, so getting honest as to what you have been eating, what you have been exercising, what kind of foods you've been eating. Just get honest and go from there. If you've been lying, it's impossible for a coach to work with you, because you're telling them one thing, they're giving you back feedback to work on something else. And we could be giving you stuff to work on step 3 and 4, but we might be actually back on step 1. Okay, that's the first thing. Getting honest is crucially important. Okay, step 2, or second point, I think is important. is to have some structure or predictability to your week, okay? From that, you can make changes. So if every day, every meal is different and it's just sporadic, it can be really hard to, make changes week to week. Now, it does not mean that every meal has to be planned out or frozen the night before or batch cook on a Sunday. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that you have a certain amount of foods in the fridge that you can go, yeah, I can go to X, Y, and Z. Okay, I know I have a certain amount of eggs in the fridge or a certain amount of, mince or whatever it may be, as opposed to leaving it to chance or leaving this unpredictable nature to it. Then more often than not, it's going to lead to a bad choice. Okay, but it also ties into our third point, which is the low-hanging fruit. So whenever we make fat loss changes to someone's diet, we always pick the lowest hanging fruit first. So what that means is what one change will give us the most wins quickly. Okay, so for one person, it might be I eat 8 meals a day or 6 meals a day, whatever it may be, a lot of meals a day, a lot of snacking, a bag of crisps an hour later, a bar of chocolate an hour later, a sandwich, this kind of thing, versus somebody who is eating only 3 or 4 meals a day, they're exercising regularly and they're looking for a very minute change. Okay, so you have two people at two very opposite ends of the spectrum. So the low-hanging fruit for one person is far, far different to the low-hanging fruit from the other person. So again, low-hanging fruit is individual, but it's what will give the biggest win with the least amount of effort, basically. So this is why I'm not a big fan of meal plans, because the person never gets educated on how they can make changes for themselves. Okay, so what works for me might not work for you, might not work for Tom down the road or Mary down the road. We're all at different ages of our lives and different parts of our journey, and we all have different circumstances. So figuring out what's going to work for your circumstances is very, very important. Okay, so for example, I give a meal plan to a person. I say you have to eat chicken and rice here. Okay, and they go home and no one in the house likes chicken and rice, so they have to go. It's a big ordeal to go cooking separate foods every time they want to eat. Sure, their willpower might get them through the first day or two of it, but eventually that stuff dies off, and it's just not sustainable. So picking the low-hanging fruit, what will give the biggest wins with the least amount of effort. Chicken and rice is probably a bad example because everyone eats chicken and rice, but you know what I mean. Just there's different stuff that, yeah, you could do for a day or two, but like, really, is it sustainable? Is it a long-term thing? If the answer is no, change it quick. Okay. And the last thing is, I'm a big believer in this, is just picking one target and trying to go after it and get lots of wins with it. So 21 days is what they roughly say it takes to start forming a habit. So if we picked a target that's positive, it's 21 days of positive targets. Okay, so it might be something simple. Again, now it varies from person to person. We'll take the person, for example, who's snacking all day. They're having 6 to 8 kind of meals or snacks throughout the day. I might just tell that person, look, let's dial that back to 5 meals a day. If they can reduce it by 2 or 3 meals or even 1 meal for 21 days, that's a huge win. We'll just say, for example, that 1 meal was a Mars bar, and that Mars bar is 600 calories. Over the course of a week, that's 4,200 calories. That's a lot of calories. That's one Mars bar. We'll just say they have 4 a day. Leave them have 3, take out 1. It's still a huge win. Whereas sometimes the thing can be, people go all in on diets and they take out all the Mars bars and all the nice stuff. And what happens? 3 days later, they're back on a diet again, and now they're eating 5 and 6 calories, 5 or 6 Mars bars a day, because they feel shit about themselves, and they're fatter than they were before. So my point is, pick one target that you know you can do, but it will push you into a negative calorie balance. Get 3 weeks consistently of achieving that. That will be my very first step, and I think that will serve you quite well at the start. Okay? So lads, that is our week 2 webinar on fat loss and the basics of it. I hope you found it informative. That was the whole point of it. Somebody educating that you can start to make your own decisions going forward. Week 2, we'll build on from this again, and we will just provide some more info around fat loss because it is a very, very detailed subject. Okay, so thanks for tuning in, and I shall chat to you soon.